Like, this is my first time here, and it is astonishing. The brick and mortar, I loved it. I FaceTimed my wife last night, and I said, oh, you would be mad, because she loves cities like this. And so I want to say thank you to Laurel. What you've done here is amazing, giving us an opportunity and a platform. I believe personally that sometimes we go through some things because there's purpose and meaning on the other side of it. And for me, like John, everything that I went through became on-the-job training that uniquely qualified me to go back into a fire that once consumed me. Those flames should have destroyed me, and instead they refined me and made me the best possible version of myself. I am a person of recovery, and what that looks like for me, it means I have not put a drink, a drug, a pill, a pot, anything in me since February 27th of 2015, and I am beyond grateful for that. Now, I also want to say what recovery looks like to me today is I get to be a dad to an awesome 13-year-old who has never seen me assault his mother, who has never seen me steal something that he needs, who has never seen me miss an appointment. He goes to a private school. He just got awards for religious study. He just got advanced from pre-algebra to trig. I can barely do a math problem, so I'm impressed. He is an amazing kid. And every day I pray that he doesn't end up like I was. I have a wonderful partner. My wife is my best friend. She is my foundation. I met her at the coffee pot at a recovery function. I was 38 years old, previously released from prison. In 2015, I successfully re-entered society with a very dark and colorful history that was very stigmatizing, and the barriers from my history limited my life. And at 38 years old, my hat was on backwards, my pants were sagging, and she basically walked up to me and told me to turn my hat around, pull my pants up. You're too old to dress like that, and you look stupid. Now, I slept beside the West Memphis 3. I did time with the blue light rapist, the I-40 sniper. Like, I knew real killers who were doing life sentences that never talked to me the way she did. I fell in love immediately. She was a unicorn. I was infatuated, and my life has never been the same since. I'm also a homeowner. I founded a nonprofit with my wife that houses 40 men. We teach those men how to be husbands, fathers, brothers, sisters, partners. We make God cool and recovery fun, and that's our mission. And I'm also a business owner and an author. And I'm all of these things because of recovery. And if you asked me today, how did my life go from not being able to get a job mowing your grass because people seem to think I'm steal it and smoke it after I cut it, to having this life that is unbelievably fabulous? And the short answer for me is God. I'm not up here to preach, and I hope that doesn't offend anyone, but I do want to tell you that addiction had shattered my life into thousands of pieces. God picked those pieces up and turned my life into a masterpiece. And that's what I get to do today. I get to live my life, and I get to live it on purpose. I feel like it's important to say with this audience that I was unemployable, right? Like, I had 18 felony convictions when I was released. I had a pending drug charge. I used to think that I was a product of my environment. Of course, those were Tupac lyrics that I stole in the 90s. Said them because I thought they fit my life, but the truth is I was a product of my decisions, not my circumstances. I always knew right from wrong, even if I was trapped in an unhealthy environment. And I found recovery upon re-entering society, and something miraculous happened. My Governor Asa Hutchinson at that time, took a huge political risk and hired me to be over peer support in my state. I was actively on parole when I took that state position. So I literally went from sitting in a state prison to a state position. Special waivers had to be signed. Policies had to be changed. Nobody at DHS wanted to be in the office with me. They thought I'd steal their ink pen. You know what I mean? So when I get here and I see my name on a welcome poster, Laurel, I'm like, well, we've came a long way from a warrant, you know? And I tell you what, we changed history in my state. Those political risks that my governor took paid off. We created life-changing programs. We changed futures. We changed families. We changed the dynamic for a cost-effective thing called recovery. And what we started to see was reductions in these slides. And I want to tell you, if you were to ask me why I do what I do right now, I'm going to share a story with you. My wife and I, we run this 40-bed recovery home. One of my guys moved out the night before last. He'd been with me for 15 months. And as I was taking off on the runway to come here, he was entering the emergency room. And it was a fatal overdose, and Kai will never come home again. And that's what my plane ride yesterday looked like. So on these death overdose numbers, Kai is one of those. So when people ask me, why do you do what you do, Jimmy? Why do you go city to city? Why are you leaving your wife and your kid? It's real simple. I'm tired of burying more people than pastors do. I'm tired of going to more funerals than birthdays, weddings, and graduations combined. And then we overlook this, right? Alcoholism, still number one, still the biggest killer, the biggest threat, and still probably one of the biggest impact on employers. And that is why we've got to do something different, right? Because what we do and have done, it doesn't work. If it did, alcoholism wouldn't be at an all-time high. Addiction and overdoses and mental health and, facilities, they would not be at an all-time high, right? And when there's four things that impact a person's recovery: health, home, community, and purpose. And here's what I know about purpose. When my governor took a risk on me, the guy with all those felony convictions, the least likely to be a good employee, let's be honest. If I show up at a job interview and I'm honest on my resume and I say I've got 18 felony convictions, I got a GED that I got in state prison, but I've got lived experience and I've got meaning and I've got an overwhelming desire to work harder than anybody else on your employee, but the guy who interviews beside me has got a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, never been convicted, who's more likely to get that job? I could not find employment. But here's what we saw. I was hired as a coordinator at a salary. I was kissing the ground of my boss. I could not believe that. And I'm like, what? It was the average starting salary. But what we saw was I was the first to show, the last to go, and I worked circles around everybody else I was around. Let me tell you why. Because I fought and kicked and clawed my way out of hell for the chance I was given. I never thought I would have the life I had, so I had twice as much to prove and I worked twice as hard. And then they said, you know what, maybe we need to hire somebody else on recovery. So I got a promotion and the state made me the recovery manager. And then they gave me the autonomy to hire the people I want to hire. And then HR became a pain in my butt. And you guys know your HR departments. We can't hire them, they're felons. So we changed state laws. We had Senator Bledsoe sponsor a bill that said people with non-sexual charges and non-violent charges should and could work for state agencies in the role of a peer support. It passed unanimously in the House and the Senate, and my governor signed it into law as an emergency. So immediately I was hiring. Now, I'm an executive at this point, right? Like I'm managing the state. I couldn't get a job 2 years ago, and now I've got $1 million budget, right? And I start hiring people with face tattoos, and we're stationed in downtown DHS with all the executives. And the next thing you know is the mental health commissioner and the director of the substance abuse treatment side, they start coming over because they're depressed and stressed out. And the next thing you know, we're peering these people. And all of a sudden, the entire Department of Human Services are stopping by our division every morning just to have coffee because we cheer them up. We have this attitude of gratitude. Makes it hard to be hateful when you're grateful, right? And the next thing you know, I get a promotion again, and I'm now the director of the Office of Recovery for Peer and Recovery Supports. And I had a 10-person staff. I had 10% of the mental health block grant, 10% of the substance use block grant, and 10% of all discretionary grants. And anywhere you can imagine mental health and substance use impacting, we put recovery workers. This slide up here shows you the impact that alcohol and drugs are doing to your employer, right? Like, as an employer, we know for a fact that drugs and alcohol is not going anywhere. Let's be real. It's been around since blood was in the veins. And if we know the fight is coming, listen, if you know you got to get in the ring with Mike Tyson, don't be Jake Paul. You better train really, really hard, because that man hits hard and he's fast, and you know it's coming. That's the way it is with alcohol and substance use. We know it's here. We know it's coming. Why are we not preparing for it? If it is costing you $100,000 a year in manufacturing costs, and one peer support salary could offset that, why are we not engaging the solutions, right? And so when you talk about peer support, here's what we do. When I was active in addiction, I knew who to call to get you whatever you needed. Tia, if you called me from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and you needed a pill, I knew who to call to go get that. The same way that we do that, we hustle the system. You need a bus pass, I know who to call to get you a bus pass. You need treatment, I know who to call to get you in treatment. Dan sat up here and he told you stories about how the system that was in place did not work. But when the system doesn't work, guess what my governor taught me? Change it. Change it. We are the key. If you don't like something, change it. It's not hard to mobilize. It is not hard. The next thing you know, we can get you into housing. The EAP system, it didn't know what to do. So Dan, one of the first things they did was started working with the labor union in St. Louis. And now we've got peers everywhere working on construction sites, which is a really needed thing, right? Like, that's a rough population of people. And so I know that because that's my population of people, right? Like, we would get drunk, we would get high, yada, yada, yada. But now, when those things happen, instead of absentee employees, you've got a peer recovery worker on access, right? And so peers can often be that missing piece, and that's what we've been talking about this morning. They're not the be-all, end-all, right? But they are part of the solution. And the way it works is you may be struggling with alcohol and addiction. Addiction is shame-based. Everything about it is shameful. The family's ashamed, the addict is ashamed, the things we do to get and use make us ashamed. And so along my journey of 23 years of incarceration and IV drug addiction, there were a lot of good people who tried to talk to me. A lot of counselors, a lot of teachers, a lot of preachers, mental health professionals. They were probably really good at their job. I didn't give them a chance. Have you ever shot heroin? No. Have you ever stole from your mother to get a fix? Well, I had, and I was embarrassed about that. And I was afraid that if I opened up to them, Laurel, they would be judgmental to me. They would be condescending to me. I couldn't be honest with you. You were a trained, educated person. I'm the scourge of the earth. Why would I think I could trust you? But with a person in recovery, that fear is removed instantly. And within seconds, a person who didn't qualify to get in the places I were in reached me, broke through that ice in a matter of minutes, y'all. And all of a sudden, I had an instant rapport, and I was not afraid to be honest. And it changed my life, just like it changed John's. So let's talk about what peer support is. A peer support specialist is somebody who has lived experience with addiction, mental health, or recovery. The recovery piece has got to be there, right? And they are a service provider. Once they're trained, they are uniquely providing a skilled service to the public. That's what peer support is. And the role of a peer support specialist is going to look uniquely different than anything you've ever seen. Let's get real. This is the only job force in the history of the workforce that is built off lived experience instead of learned education. What qualifies me to be trained is my lived experience. And so that person is going to look like a hope dealer, a cheerleader, a motivator. They are role modeling recovery. We are a walking, talking, visible, tangible thing that a person struggling can find hope in. When I tell you that I spent 23 years in active drug addiction, that I went to prison 6 times, that I survived sexual abuse, that I was a deadbeat father, that I was raised in an atmosphere of child neglect, and in that neglect, a thug was born, and that person has transcended to a working class American who is a productive husband, father, I pay taxes, y'all. That is a walking hope shot that somebody struggling with drug addiction can barely imagine. And when they identify it and they hear it from me, they know it's real. When they hear it from somebody who has walked it and talked it, it's a language that can't be faked. It's not fraudulent. We come with a passion that can't be bought, taught, or replicated. And that is what we do, right? We resource broke. We become change agents. We advocate. A few things that we strive to include in our daily practice is advocating people. We share our experience, right? We're not a counselor, so I don't give advice. When I give you advice, if you follow through with it and it doesn't pan out, guess who you blame? Now the very thing we need, the trust between you and I is gone because you blame me for something that didn't work. Part of peer support is believing that the answers are in you and providing you the resources to make your own decisions. And it's evidence-based, right? Our primary purpose is to the people we serve, which is the people who work for you. We try to not use clinical jargon. We try to use simple and easy to understand language. The reason for that is exclusive vocabulary is rendered useless when I constantly have to explain what I said, right? And to most people coming out of addiction, they're not college educated people. They can be, at least not the ones where I was at. Now in today's society, we got doctors who are using. There's, I just had a conversation with a judge who is a previous judge who is now unemployable because of his opioid addiction. He blew his shoulder out. So there's no limits here on who it reaches. These are just a few things that we try to do in our day-to-day stuff with peer support. And how can you utilize a peer? You can hire peers directly. One of the things we did in Arkansas was we started everything with grants on 2-year policies. And at the end of the 2 years, the employers decided to keep the programs, right? We had peer support in the hospitals. And so what we saw in the hospitals were a reduction of cost because they get fined for readmission by the same person on the same thing. And so that salary that they hired the peers directly saved them so much money, right? And that's not counting ambulance transfers. That's not counting intakes. That's not counting same-day service fees. We also saw it in the jails. We saw it everywhere. Positions were being converted, intake positions. Courts were changing administrators' positions to peer positions, right? Like, it's good business. Better services means good business, right? And if you know it's going to save you money, our mindset was, if we can collect enough data and we can show the usefulness of it to where we want the choice to be, okay, it's foolish for me not to do this. And good business owners make good choices, right? Most of the time, hopefully. You can contract your peer through a recovery community organization. You have 17 of those in Ohio. That's a pretty good, amazing number of RCOs. You can also utilize virtual peer services. NPRA is doing that. Dan does it with family, people, and our peers across the state do it. We actually have an NPRA Ohio chapter, and the person who is in charge of that affiliate group is an amazing woman in long-term recovery. These are ways that you can contract peers who are individuals in recovery that can be useful to you. Again, if you know the problem is coming, we need to prepare ourselves for it. What peers need to be successful is we need to establish a recovery-friendly workforce. And so what does that look like? We need employers to be understanding that people can and do recover, and drug addiction is going to be a part of society going forward. It's not going anywhere. And so if we can prepare ourselves for it and we can create a recovery-friendly workforce, and what I mean by that is when we normalize recovery, people can be honest with you about it. And Dan talked about it a little bit, right? Like, the more we talk about this, the more it surfaces, the more we see this, right? People started coming out of the woodwork at Energizer, right? And so Dan was able to change that culture, and now you've got recovery-friendly workplaces. And these are just some things that you can do. You know, you can form connections to community resources for treatment, recovery, and general care. Education, you could host educational events, listening session with your execs one day. It's not hard. We just have to be willing to do it. How peer support can help you and your employees, right? Like it improves health and well-being in the workforce, decreases absence. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm not showing up to work if I'm high. I'm paranoid that you know I'm high, and plus I've got I can't be on my telephone, which is where I wanna be, staring, just scrolling constantly, stuck in a loop, and I can't produce things. And Dan also talked about the families who are struggling with as caregivers, right? Like they can't focus. You know, this person is a CEO, an executive director, a manager. You're expecting them to produce high quality results, but the truth is they're worried about their child who's been out all night, who's been smoking or injecting, right? Increased professionalism, productivity, employee retention. There's tons of reasons to have a recovery-friendly workforce. And so I would challenge you to scan these QR codes if you want to know more, if you want to learn more. This is how you can get involved. The ARCHway Institute, the National Peer Recovery Alliance, and again, we have an Ohio State affiliate. NPRA would love to be a solution for you. If you have someone struggling and you scan that, I've got business cards. You can email me. My cell phone is on there. I am the most accessible director of a national agency you will ever find. You text me, I will text back. I will put you personally in contact with Sam or with Stephanie, who is on our advisory board, and we will get you the resources you need for whatever you're going through in Ohio. Again, thank you for letting me come out. My name is Jimmy McGill.